Street.
Yes.
And John Shorey, my dear friend, is back today. John, we love you.
Great to have you, John.
Wow, so much is happening, John. This is God's hour, and God is doing so much. We got some news today that's going to shock the daylights out of you. But God's doing, and you write me often. We write back and forth in email and text or whatever, and we're modern, old people. But he's not old, I'm old. But God is doing so many things that if you don't study the Word, you won't know what's going on.
Yeah.
But it's like I feel like probably 25 major events have taken place since the blood moons and the Shemitah years. Don't you see it all, John?
Oh, absolutely. You know, initially, so many people were hanging that one event would happen September 13th, September 23rd, and it's like, if nothing happens, I guess the Lord's not coming back. And it to me, it almost seems like people wanted the worst disaster possible to happen. And if the worst disaster didn't happen, I guess the Lord's not coming back. And it's almost like...
But the world is so full of disasters. Israel's at war right now. And all the tetrads have signified war over the last decades.
Absolutely.
Am I right? I mean, the last tetrads that came.
Well, if you go and take a look at 1492 or whatever.
Way back.
Yeah, way back.
And that was Spain, when Spain threw out the Jews and killed them.
If you take a look at those tetrads, 1 to 2 years after the fourth blood moon of the tetrad,
yes,
Israel was delivered from annihilation.
Yes.
I mean, the Jews were going to be annihilated in Spain, and following the four tetrads was the event that led to the new world open for the Jews so that they would have a place to go for safety. 1967, the tetrads that the Six-Day War followed, that was 1 to 2 years after the four blood moons. And when it looked like Israel was going to be destroyed in 1967, America was giving them arms, but they were not giving them, people support or our Air Force or anything. They were basically on their own. They made a preemptive attack against their enemy, and in 6 days, the enemy was begging for peace. Well, each of these tetrads, 1 to 2 years later, we see an event of deliverance for Israel. And here we are, we just completed 4 blood moons, and Israel is at a state of war.
That's right.
I mean,
absolutely.
Totally. They are literally having to be totally on their toes. They're calling people up to have more military boots on the ground, so, you know what I mean, on alert for not just what's happening with people stabbing each other, but this could literally be a time where their enemies would attack them from outside of their borders. And when that happens, Israel will be delivered. The pattern will hold true that following these 4 tetrads, it will be Israel on top.
Wow. Israel has always had arms. They've always had, all the boys and girls serve in the army.
That's right.
We met them.
We did.
And here we are in the midst of, when you go to Israel, you can see the army kids. I call them kids.
They are kids.
Young
they're 19,
people, very, very
20,
young people.
21.
And
yeah.
they're everywhere.
Yes.
But now they're hiring, or I'm not hiring, but deploying hundreds of armed soldiers to protect the people.
That's right.
They're just, I just read, John, something that was shocking to me, that, you like to shop in the old village there, the old Jerusalem.
Old Jerusalem.
You know,
Yes.
they say Old Jerusalem is almost a ghost town.
Oh my goodness, that's shocking. It is.
People are so
those that have
afraid
been
because
there,
they're killing in the streets.
It is.
That's right.
They're maiming in the streets. Isn't that right?
The Palestinians are attacking the Jewish people. Basically, it seems like on every corner in Jerusalem. It says Israel erects wall to protect the Jews in East Jerusalem. You know, Pastor, Pastor, you were talking about how they have deployed soldiers. Israel has deployed hundreds of soldiers to protect their people from the Palestinians. Just this weekend, it says that Israel deploys hundreds of soldiers in Jerusalem. Just this weekend alone, they deployed 300 more soldiers. Here's an article that says, Israeli gun license requests skyrocket by 5,000% amid wave of terror attacks.
Now, wait a minute. 5,000%, not 500%. You don't hear a lot of 5,000% increase.
That's right.
And they're running out of everything to defend themselves. Our friends live there.
That's
and
right.
they've been emailing me back materials from Israel.
Yes.
Showing me what's going on.
And, you know, they were looking at just a couple of weeks ago about 150 requests a day to receive a gun. Now, the past couple of weeks, it's 8,000 requests every single day. And it's happened, remember, like John Shorey told us, it's always been around the blood moons that things happen to Israel. Now, these blood moons from the 1492, the 1948, the 1967, around those years, it has always had big world events that ultimately affected the Jewish people, like we've stated. But it's another common denominator is that it's always given them more land. Around 1492, America was essentially given to them for a safe haven. 1948, Israel. 1967, Jerusalem. What is taking place right now? Could Israel be in a state where they're about ready to receive more land? We know in Genesis 15 that Israel does not currently occupy the complete borders that God has given them. Are we going to see something? Is even north what's happening with Russia and Syria, is it ultimately going to affect them in this time period to give Israel more land?
Russia goes to war right at the end of the Shemitah. The war, Russia. And it says Russia military using Syria as proving ground, and it says the West takes notice. But what's going on? Hamas is appealing to Russia to intervene and stop Israeli aggression. Can you imagine? Russia's plan, according to what I've been hearing, is to take over the Mideast. So, and all these things, so many of them are happening, and Russia, I mean, we need to pray for the peace of Jerusalem.
Amen.
That's what God says. And there's no peace in Jerusalem right now. Don't you see that?
Oh, absolutely. You know, it blows my mind that I've actually heard reports from companies that are prepping companies that things have dropped off drastically because nothing happened at the end of the fourth blood moon. And yet, none of the past historical blood moon events had anything to do with the Gentiles. It all had to do with Israel and the Jews. And I'll tell you, things are heating up in the Mideast. There is nothing that is off time for what is happening concerning the blood moons, but it's not a Gentile event.
NASA announced this week that there's a 99% chance of at least a 5.0 earthquake in Los Angeles.
And they're saying that
they don't usually do that kind of thing. They know something we don't know, and I don't know how they can say it's going to be 5.0 or more, but that's what they're saying, and they're saying 99%. Did you read that story?
Yes, I did. And they're saying that could happen at any time right now, but they guarantee it that it's going to happen. I shouldn't say guarantee, a 99% chance within 2.5 years. But it could happen at any moment, a 5.0 or greater. And they're even warning, it says there's enough energy stored to produce about a magnitude 6.1 to 6.3.
Convert or die, the headline says today, ISIS graffiti jihadist declares first European caliphate. And they're crying out, what is that headline? They're calling for their people to commit suicide and suicide attacks. All these things are happening in Jerusalem.
That's right.
And what did they do last week? Palestinians torched Joseph's tomb ahead of Rage Day. They called for a day to kill.
That's right.
The Israelis, the Jewish people.
That's right. It says Palestinians set fire to a religious site in the West Bank, revered by some Jews as the tomb of the biblical patriarch Joseph. It says the attacks came as the militant group Hamas called for a day of rage against Israel to begin following afternoon prayers.